Welcome to Inside Sim Racing. I'm Darren Ganji with my good buddy
Sean Cole.
And today we're here for our review of MotoGP 13, and we're reviewing the PC version. It's also available for the Xbox 360, PS3, and I believe the Vita. Milestone is the developer of this title, and they've become popular with their Superbike series. Actually, they did MotoGP in the past, and their WRC series. And for a while now, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years, Capcom had the license, and Monumental, I think, was the developer, and they went in a completely different direction. Now, Milestone's got it back, and this is the premier motorcycle series in the world.
And that's MotoGP. And if you're not familiar with MotoGP, it's the pinnacle of street motorcycle racing, like Formula One is to car racing. They race at similar as well as the same prestigious tracks around the world, all of which are in the game. This title also transitions Milestone away from the Superbike franchise and back to only the MotoGP title.
All right, and here's some stuff basically from the box cover, which, speaking of which, it's right here. And inside MotoGP world, loyal to MotoGP spirit in all aspects of the game, from photorealistic graphics to TV-style interface, including menus and sounds. You are the rider. Thanks to realistic handling, you can feel the bike in your hands, and you can choose to ride with scalable aids or in a pure simulative way for real fans. Simulative way?
Yeah, this might be lost in translation a little bit.
I think it might be.
Well, when you boot up, I mean, it like defaults to French.
I like that word, simulative way.
Yeah, I do too.
French, they're Italian.
Well, the default install was French.
Was it?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the first one listed.
No, it
English
said
would be before French.
and it literally said default.
Interesting.
A new immersive career mode with first-person elements like 3D pits and a helmet view grants a full immersion in the rider's shoes.
Multiplayer includes split screen and online with different game modes, Grand Prix Championship, which grant hours of entertainment. How do you like that? You're granted hours of entertainment, Sean.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's available on the PS3, PC, Xbox 360, and the Vita. Like I mentioned. Offline, up to 2 players. Online, so that would be split screen, offline. Online, up to 12 players. The PS Vita, 1 player. Offline. Online?
6 players.
All right.
Which, that's actually pretty amazing if you think about it.
It is. That's pretty cool. Now, I wonder if, I guess they connect online, so we have to get ourselves a Vita.
Or 2.
Yeah.
Most of our testing was done on the PC version, but we did also work with an Xbox pre-release version, PS3 as well, but they're both pre-release versions.
No, PS3 was final.
Okay.
The pre-release was the Xbox 360. Yeah, we can't try the Xbox 360 versions of the game because they're in PAL.
Right.
The pre-releases are not in PAL, and our dev kit can play them, so we were able to check that out.
And when we played it on the PC, we did use an Xbox-supported controller on the PC. So.
The Xbox 360 gamepad, actually the one you plug right in. Worked great, actually, by the way. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And you just make sure you get the driver, and rumble and everything works. So that's everything there is to know about the basics. When we come back, we're going to tell you what we thought about it. Physics, graphics, controls, UI, all that stuff, right after this.
Welcome back to our review of MotoGP 2013 by Milestone. And before we get to the big what we loved and hated about the game, let's talk about the differences between the PC and the console versions. And really, it is the same game across the board, but the biggest difference is on the PC, it was just so much smoother. I mean, there was a lot more jaggies on both the Xbox and PS3 version.
But not bad though. I mean,
no.
it was, when I booted up the PS3 version, I was like, wow, this is almost identical. So really similar across the board as far as those versions go. First, let's talk about the user interface, which compared to their last title, which was WRC, huge step up.
Yeah.
WRC we kind of made fun of with the whole Street Fighter look.
Right.
This is really pro looking in my opinion. And one of my favorite things about the UI is when you enter an event or go to a track, it's got a video that plays, you know, of the area.
Right.
It's really nicely cut and put together. And then it goes to this like broadcast style graphic of the track, shows you the passing zones.
Yeah.
And
when you can click through and it'll show you how many left turns, how many right turns.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Very professional looking. So yeah, definitely a huge step up on the UI compared to WRC. So I was really impressed with it.
Now, I played the pre-release version on the Xbox. I used the controller, had full rumble effect in that. You used it with the PC. Did you get the same?
Yeah, full. Yeah, it had rumble effects again. Make sure you get the driver. And I don't know if you can hook up. There's a way to hook up a wireless version of the controller. I had a wired. I just plugged into the USB port. It's recognized without the driver, but you should probably get the driver just to make sure everything works properly. But yeah, it's good control, and then you can remap things and do all that stuff. Next thing's graphics. Little cartoony. Not like photorealistic, I guess you can say.
Right.
And maybe that's so they can maintain frame rates. Frame rates, by the way, seemed locked under 60 frames, right around 60 frames on the PC. And I would imagine they're probably about 30 frames on the console. No frame rate issues.
Right.
No. And by the way, I did most of the testing on this. Sean dabbled a little bit in it. I'm the one that really put it through its paces. So if it seems like I'm talking a little more than my buddy here, that's why.
So I got a question for you. Speaking of graphics, and you riding it mostly, which riding view? I mean, because that was something that I thought was really spectacular about the game, was the different riding views. Because even more so than in a car, for me, it really changed the way the game played. So what was your preference there?
For sure, and there's really four main riding views. You've got helmet cam, so it's like attached, it's like inside your visor. And then it's like, I call it like the GoPro cam. It's almost like behind the helmet. And then you have chase cam one, and then like a further behind. I tried the helmet.
That's the one that moves, right?
Yeah, and then there's one that's more stationary, so the bike's kind of moving under, like from the helmet.
Right.
That's the GoPro one I'm talking about. And then there's the chase. I tried them all, and I guess if I really practiced it, I probably could have gotten good in the helmet cam or the on bike, but it was just really difficult because we're going to talk about this a little in physics, and maybe we'll just talk about it now. You really have to train yourself to go into the corners and just get used to the flow of leaning over the motorcycle versus just turning the wheel and it goes where you want it to go. And it's like that on a real bike. I mean, when you're riding a street bike, you haven't really ridden a street bike, have you?
No.
You've ridden motocross.
Yeah, but I kept it upright. I mean, you're not leaning around a corner.
And even a motocross bike, you put your leg out.
Yeah, and you sweep it around the corner. You don't really...
You kind of get sideways. So with a street bike, it's a really unique experience as to where you're leaning the whole vehicle and you really don't turn.
Right.
So it's tough to get the hang. So I found it sitting behind the rider. It was easier to find the apex and stay on the apex and keep the lean angle that you needed throughout the corner.
Yeah. So that's something for me that they did so well in this title, is that they really emphasized, and if you're not a rider, or even if you are a rider, they really nailed the differences between, I mean, you think racing is racing, but bike racing is totally unique. And, you know, in a car, you enter a corner and you make a mistake. You know, there's so many ways you can bleed off speed in a car. You can put it sideways and just friction bleed off speed. You can lock up the brakes. You could just drive straight through the corner and correct later. But, like, the moment you go to a corner, you've made your move on a bike, and I'm not gonna say there's no turning back.
You can adjust it. There are definitely ways, but not as easily as you can in a car.
No, and it's so precise.
It takes body language on a bike. Where in a car, you flick of the wrist and the pedals, and you're moving. There's no body language in a car.
Yeah.
The weight of your body. I mean, it's going to affect the car a little bit, but not. You can't change how the car is handling by moving around.
Right. So how do you think, as a guy who does ride bikes from time to time, how do you think they did on that aspect?
It's cool. You know, we always talk about this every time we review a motorcycle game. I want a controller. You know, you can get used to it. It's just muscle memory. It's just like driving with a gamepad. You can get used to it and you can become really good with it. But it's just that getting used to it. I'd rather just have something that feels more natural. How could you do it? I know there's the guy that's created and he hasn't actually really produced them as far as mass market goes, but I mean, I guess having something on the table to where you can lean it a little bit would help, and throttle control and having the handles, but it's definitely interesting.
Well, and what would it be, 2 different steering servos? The one for the lean versus the steer?
You don't steer really though on a bike, that's the thing.
What about low speed? You steer then?
No.
It's only when you're upright.
You don't even really steer when you're upright. It's still more about the lean. You have to have, it's all about momentum and manipulating the bike. It's not really about, I mean, in reality, it's just like you ride a bicycle.
Yeah.
You know, and you can let go of the handlebars and manipulate the bike.
Sure, you just lean.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So,
this is all physics related, so this is why I want to keep, because I don't know bikes. So the braking, I was using the auto brake and it was putting my front and rear brake together. But in motorcycling, even more than car racing, bias is critical. But you don't have a bias valve. Your bias is done manually through your hand and foot, right?
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the physics and the controls. Okay, so this is one area of sim racing that I will never, I don't think, unless I get all the controls where they're supposed to be, will use manual controls on everything. I'm using auto shift. I'm using the auto pop up. So that's another thing. How do you simulate the popping up on a bike?
Right.
To, to lean into a corner and
right.
slow. I mean, it's like an air brake.
Yeah.
So, and then you can do what you said. You can front brake and rear brake, and that, talk about manipulation. Most of your braking is done on the front brake on a bike, which is the same in a car.
Yeah.
You hit that rear brake and it starts sliding out like a motocross bike where you're like pitching it. So, and it really will do that. You can feel it do that, but I just talk about hand-eye coordination. I mean, you're just pushing buttons all over the place and it's just too much for me versus focusing on gas, brake, lean,
right?
That kind of stuff. So,
if you had proper controls, would that change? Would that become
again,
like
we were talking about that. What do you push a button for the pop-up?
Yeah, you'd still be stuck there.
And then, I don't know. I'd have to have it in my hands, like, so grabbing the front brake, and then, your foot is the rear brake.
Yeah.
So it's not like you have them right both next to each other. So it takes some getting used to. Now the physics, it's kind of hard to tell because you're running it through a gamepad, but they seem realistic. I mean, you push it too hard, the bike will, high side on you, the rear tire will kick out. And what I also like is that they got the Moto 3, Moto 2, and the Moto GP. Moto 3 is like riding a frickin' scooter. I mean, the thing's got no horsepower, they're gutless, and it's really hard to get them out of control. But then, and we'll transition, we'll talk about the career a little bit and just kind of mix it all together. I love the career mode. You start as an independent, try to get a ride on a team, and you're in Moto 3, and then you got to work. I haven't even got out of Moto 3 yet. So I ran a bunch of Moto 3 and then went and dabbled in Moto 2 and Moto GP. Whoa, those bikes are fast. Man, tires, doing a burnout.
Aren't those GP bikes like 250 horsepower or something?
Yeah.
That's insane.
It is insane. So, I like the variation between the bikes. And then even within each class, some bikes are faster than others. So it's not like in Moto 3, all the bikes are the same.
Right.
There's
so the Ducati's different than the Honda.
Yeah, I don't even know if Ducati's in there, but yeah. In the lower, it's I think mainly KTM and Honda. So there's definitely differences, and based on the team too. Some teams are faster than others, and you want to try to get on the faster team. The Red Bull team seems to be the fastest. What else? Weather. All weather effects, rain, light rain, fog. And one of the things I really love about this game is that the dynamic line changing. So if the rain dries, the line will start to dry. In the dry, you start with a green track or fresh track, and you start building up a line. That starts in practice, goes into qualifying, and then even gets darker through the
Wow.
race. So yeah, that's a really neat feature that I really enjoyed. You know, and I started racing with the driving line on. You don't need it.
Right.
Run a bunch of laps, let the AI run the lap, and then the groove starts showing up. So
very cool.
I really liked that aspect of the game. I really had a lot of fun. Really had a lot of fun with the game, period. It really drew me in and kept me wanting to play more. I'll probably pick it up again and continue my career again in the future. A lot of times we play these titles and then the next version's already coming out.
Sure.
And we're already transitioning to that, but I could see myself getting into this. I had a good time with it.
I had a good time. I only ran a couple of tracks just trying to get a couple videos done, but basically got me enough seat time because it took a lot of laps just to get good enough to be able to record a lap or two.
That was one of the fun things for me too, was just, you know, we take for granted how hard it is to drive the Sims because we're so used to them and we drive them so much that it's like, you know, we transition to them easily. So it was really, you know, the muscle memory thing, learning everything from scratch was a lot of fun. And, you know, it takes me back to the start of, you know, when we were starting sim racing, that, you know, just learning how to manipulate the bike to do what you hope it's going to do.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject of drawing line and stuff, the tracks all are there. Got to run the Austin GP. There's a version of Le Mans that's there, like a short version of Le Mans that they run at. So all the tracks from the 18 race schedule are included. And I think they also come out with some DLC over time. Cool title.
Very cool. I had a lot of fun with it. I wish I had more time to play. I wish I was a better bike rider.
You know, it's just about learning the apex and learning the bike and learning. You know, oh, that's another thing. You can set the bike up. I didn't really feel like huge changes when I was making tweaks to you can like do the rake angle of the steering and how stiff the suspension is and stuff like that. The gearing was the biggest changes that I saw.
Well, for me, I'm trying to do my saw rally thing. It just wasn't working out.
You gotta be smooth on a bike. Sounds are pretty good. The higher end bikes are definitely beefier in sounding. The lower end bikes sound more like a freaking moped. The rumple strip sounds were so-so. But everything else, I thought were good. Back to the physics are good. A little forgiving at times, a little unforgiving at other times. AI.
Yeah.
Pretty good. I mean, they don't run you over too often, but I got ran over a couple times. I was into my career, my third race, and like a lap to go. I'm battling for the lead, and the dude just frickin' takes me out.
I found that the AI was way faster than me getting into the corner, and I was faster than them pretty much everywhere else. So they'd run me over into the corner, I'd run them over out of the corner.
And they wouldn't alter their line at all. I found at some tracks that I would just nail some sections and be on the slower bikes, and I was able to win races. And I was able to step up the AI. Started at medium level, and then I went to hard. And but I found that at certain tracks, or almost all the tracks, there's like a corner or two that they just don't get.
Right.
And then if you get it, you're gonna win every time. Because I mean, you could have a less powerful. They'll pass you on the straights, but then as soon as you get to that corner,
yeah,
you go rocketing past them.
They think it's second gear and you're in third gear.
Yeah, or even fourth.
Yeah. One thing I will say about this that I remember from milestone titles of the past, but I would love to see longer wrecks. I mean, one thing about bike wrecks is they kind of go for a little while.
You just brought up a good point. Damage. Weak. It's just not even visual. Like scrapes is what you get. You can damage the bike to where you're done.
Right.
Your race will be over. There's also random failures, which that kind of pissed me off one time. I was late in a race, winning, and the bike broke. But hey, that's real life. I mean, that does really happen. You know, and another thing I wanted to mention too about the tracks and just the physics and taking the time to learn the tracks can be a very rewarding experience. Because even though you learn the track, it's then being consistent and getting that lean time right and the braking and trail braking is really key, you know. And you know, if you brake too much, the bike will stop you on you.
Yeah.
If you alter your brakes and try to brake more rear, it'll slide out. So anyway, it's really rewarding to get the hang of it. So I think we should wrap it up and rev scale it.
Yeah, so why don't you do the rev scale?
I'd give it an 8. I'd give it a solid 8. I think it definitely deserves that. 10 would get it better graphics, more photorealistic graphics, triple screen compatibility, not triple screen compatible, which I don't know if we mentioned in the graphics part. I don't think we did, but I would have liked to have seen that. And I want to see it in WRC4 milestone. Come on, guys. There was the mod guy that did the triple screen, so I want to see some triple screen compatibility.
Yeah.
Get it in our hands and we'll help you test it. So yeah, I'd give it an 8.
Cool. And final thoughts?
Final thoughts, I would say must have for a sim racers library. Unless you just hate motorcycles and you want nothing to do with them. But I'd say even as a diversion, I'd say it's definitely on the sim side. There's really nothing arcade about this title. I'm trying to think if there's any arcade elements. There really aren't.
I thought there's a little bit of bouncing off the competitors, so anytime I've ever seen bikes on TV contact, it pretty much resulted in crash.
And I would go back to physics. The physics are a little forgiving on that end, but there's no power-ups or you nailed the corner or zing zing
or super draft.
Super draft, yeah, exactly. So there's none of that. It is definitely a sim. You can run full distance races. Oh, one of the things I like about the career, you can adjust the levels, the distances, and everything before every race. So a lot of times you start a career and you're stuck in that. You're stuck in the medium AI at 25% distance. You're like all of a sudden, hey, I want to run 50% distance.
Yeah.
So it allows you to adjust it every race as you go.
That is cool.
And you got a team manager and stuff that they send you some generic emails and stuff. That got a little boring, but it's cool. I like it. I'd recommend it. I definitely recommend it. And available on the PC, PS3, Xbox 360, and I think the Vita. And were we talking about the Vita? It is available.
Yeah, Vita. It's on the
Vita.
Vita.
I think it's on the Vita.
Yeah, we've mentioned it a couple times.
And yeah, that's going to wrap it up. Anything else from you?
No, I had a good time with it too, and I think anybody who's a bike fan is going to love it. And if you're a racing fan, like you said, it's a good addition to the library.
Yep. And I'd say they do the license proud. The MotoGP license with the professional UI and all the riders and teams, tracks, everything's in there. So definitely worth picking up. I'd like to thank Andy at PQ for hooking us up with all the copies of the title. And check us out on our site, isrtv.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. We have a section on our forums devoted to MotoGP, so if you want to come and talk about it, feel free. I know there's some guys that were already running it in there, and maybe you could hook up and do some multiplayer racing. I'd love to get in a full field race. That's the other thing we didn't really try was multiplayer.
Right.
But I'd like to get in I heard that it was a little buggy and warpy, but I'd like to get in a full field race with some guys that were really into it. That'd be fun. So that's going to wrap it up. For Sean Cole, I'm Darren Ganji. We'll see you guys next time.
His race today was simply perfect. He and his team deserve to bask in every moment of the glory. It's down to a lot of hard work.